I'll be describing a special pinwheel experiment that took place on June the 7th, 2022. Now, at this stage of the research, we're very interested in the weather outdoors because there's a hypothesis that the warmer temperatures prevent, don't require the heating system of the house to come on or the cooling system of the house to come on. And so we shouldn't have any possibility of the ventilation system affecting the pinwheel, the heat transmission or the air somehow getting through the vent or anything like that will have no effect on the creating artifact effects for the pinwheels. So the hypothesis based on that artifact hypothesis, that artifact theory, is that there should be a lower level of activation of the pinwheels when we have a pretty consistent temperature. Temperature is very similar indoors to outdoors. So we notice the temperature is 80 degrees, around 80 degrees during the 2 o'clock hour, and that's what we're interested in, is 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So it's relatively warm, no reason to expect any major activity on the pinwheels in that kind of situation. So the temperature is between 80 and 84 degrees. We're looking at the activations previous to this Tuesday. There's 1 on Friday, 1 on Saturday, 5 on Sunday, 8 on Monday. Then on Tuesday there is only 2 from midnight to 2 p.m. So the average for the 4 days is 3.75. So we would expect something similar to that, just to naturally occur. So here's a video of the camera setup. Now this pinwheel here, which I refer to as star, has been covered over by the dome, and I'm removing that dome. And I'm going to be taking it off so I can get all these 3 pinwheels. This is star. Refer to this as the aluminum pinwheel. This is a paper pinwheel at this stage. And notice when it was in the room, it causes activity on the pinwheels. Then they stop turning within about 60 seconds. That's been my experience, is that they stop turning. And then here's a control video done 5 minutes before this interview will take place. And you see there's still no activity whatsoever. So there's no reason to think we'll have more than, say, 3 or 4 activations, which is the average during this next hour. So here, right at 2 o'clock is the first activation, and a pretty strong one, 1 1/8 turn of this aluminum pinwheel. Now it would seem, the interview's taking place, it would seem that the sound is not turned on with the blink microphone, but apparently it is, because we have a chirping sound in the background. We're getting feedback chirping. We're assuming that the chirping is due to feedback. And so during this interview we have a chirping sound, and so this is not the exact image that occurred that day, because you see the dome's still on, but the chirping, I'm talking with Kristi, and I asked her to tell us about herself, and she talks about her interest in parapsychology and also her taking part in a haunting investigation. And the chirping sounds causing this image of the pinwheels to come on the screen. So apparently the sound is being activated there in the pinwheel room, in the meditation room. And so we're continuing on with this interview, and the postman knocks on the door, and she leaves the room to talk to the postman, and I'm seeing the pinwheels come flash on the screen again, apparently due to this chirping sound. So but it flashes back to her living room again. So I call out to the pinwheels, "Hey pinwheel, hey pinwheel, hey pinwheel," and then they immediately come back on the screen and they start turning. So it seemed very unusual, and we're counting the number of turns, the number of blink activations, and that's considered kind of a measure of the phenomena activity. So here's an example of one of the activations. Pretty strong, 1 1/4 turns from the aluminum pinwheel, and then some slight amount of turning from this star pinwheel. Here's another activation. I'm showing you the strongest activations. But in order for the blink camera to be activated, typically we need to have about a half a turn within 20 seconds for it to activate. This is the strongest turn of the session. So it would seem as if the recorder of the blink cameras is not recording our conversation, yet somehow the pinwheels are interacting with our discussion, and the chirping sound suggests that there is some type of feedback going on. Here's another activation. The interview's over, so we're having some residual phenomena. There's some activation of the star pinwheel. Here's the final turn of the day. The interview's over. Another activation occurring after the interview. But for the rest of the day, there's no more activity. Now, in the history of these pinwheels, these are fairly strong activations compared to events that occurred after this session. Here we look at the pinwheels just to see what's happening. I'm looking in on them, and I find they're at 1759 that they're absolutely still. Sometimes when you check on them, you see they might, actually very rarely, but sometimes you see that they're moving very, very slightly, not enough to activate the blink camera. So here's a summation. During the interview, we had 20 activations. So that's a very high number, unexpectedly high. Here's the strongest activations occurred, 3 of which occurred during the interview. We had that chirping noise, a feedback effect, which affected the focus of the zoom camera, and it focused on the pinwheels, and then they seemed to respond to my voice calling on this occasion. So have a very low level of activity, 2 activations on the day before, then 20 during the interview, then 4 afterwards, after 1500 hours, and then the next day. So a very unusual situation, and it would seem that the group meeting, the gathering of participants, had an effect on the pinwheels.